Oh, hello. If you're on here, stick around because I have a special guest coming on in just a few seconds. Her name is Dr. Amy Johnson, and we're going to talk a lot about the no willpower way to overcoming any habit or any intrusive thoughts. I'm super duper excited for this. Pull up a chair, get cozy. Hi, hi, hi. Hello. Thank you for joining. Hi, Tara. Thank you for joining. We will have a special guest coming on super duper soon. So just stick around. She'll be on very quickly. Her name is Dr. Amy Johnson. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. Do you like my earrings? They are dream catchers. Yeah, they're my universe sign. So anytime I see them, it means to me that I'm in the right place at the right time, feeling the right things, thinking the right things. And my existence at that moment is not a mistake. Okay, let's see. Amy is here, but let me try to get her on. Let's see. I hope there's no technical difficulties. There we go. Hi, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's so nice to see you again. Oh no, there's a lag. Okay.
Oh,
Okay, are we back?
I'm here.
All right.
All
Awesome. So
right.
good to see you again, Amy.
You too. Thank you.
So hello everyone that is joining for the live and also perhaps for the replay. I am chatting with Dr. Amy Johnson today, who is the author of Being Human and also Just a Thought, which is her upcoming book, and also The Little School of Big Change, the Little Book of Big Change. And she also is the founder of the Little School of Big Change, which I have been a student. And if you listen to our previous interview, I think it was back in March.
March, I think. Yep.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
back in March when I was not a student yet. We were talking about the no willpower approach to ending any habit or having any intrusive thoughts. And when I first read her book, I was like so enlightened, but at the same time, I was very skeptical about whether it would work on me and whether I would see the right things. And the very simple approach really it was mind-boggling because I've done all the self-development work on how do I end my binge eating, how do I stop my anxiety, how do I stop having this thought, and how do I get over this obsession. And when I came across this, it was like, wow, it's really, really that simple. So now you're seeing me post graduation from the little school, and I talk a little bit about what it was like being in the school, but I want you to get a chance to meet Dr. Amy Johnson. So Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your work and how you stumbled across this paradigm?
Yeah, well, I stumbled across it because I was suffering. I had a lifetime of anxiety and intrusive thoughts and OCD stuff and binge eating and the whole bit. And I did everything like many people do. You know, I had done a lot of things, and I thought that I was controlling a lot of my habits. I was doing okay in life, and I felt like that was because I was doing the right things. I was keeping it all under control. That took a lot of effort and was very scary and took a lot of work, because if I was controlling it, then that meant, okay, one wrong move and it's all going to come back, you know? So it definitely wasn't a feeling of freedom. It wasn't like a thing of the past. It felt like something I had to manage all the time. And so I came across, I'd been looking into spiritual things, and I was trained as a psychologist. So I was on this path already, but I came across some stuff I heard that was just incredibly helpful. And that's what I share now in the school and in my books. And, it's hard to kind of put it in a nutshell, as you know, from being through the school. It's hard to boil this down to one or two little things, but I guess if I had to kind of sum it up, a lot of what I saw is that all human beings are perfectly healthy, perfectly okay, exactly as we are. And we have this constantly revolving flow of experience that moves through us. So we're constantly thinking, we're constantly feeling what we're thinking. Our mind is constantly telling stories and connecting dots and telling us what's what. And there's just this nonstop narration happening in our heads. And we aren't that narration, that these thoughts and feelings are moving through us all the time. And it could be anything from, again, cravings and urges and intrusive thoughts to boring thoughts to like happy thoughts, like, oh, I love my dog, she's so adorable today. Like all of that, it just shows up. We don't make it happen, we don't put it there, and we certainly can't control it, at least not very well. We can try, but we're not really controlling it, and we don't have to. So there's something about getting this feel for how we are so much bigger than our psychology, and our psychology just rolls through. And when we come to be less afraid of it, we think it's less like we see that it's not so personal, it's nothing we have to control and fix. Things just get much, much easier. So that's sort of my super quick nutshell of what this is, but it changed my life, and that's why I share it now.
It sounds like what you're saying is the experiences flow through us, but we're not creating them at all. We're just experiencing them.
Yeah, that's how it looks to me, because I don't see myself. I certainly wouldn't have been creating, urges to binge eat all the time. I don't know why I would do that. Even now, a bunch of my experience now, I wouldn't be creating it if I were in charge. So it just seems to me like it just shows up really, truly from out of the blue. And I think there's so much in, sometimes that can feel a little bit like, oh my gosh, well, I'm not in control, but once we kind of ease into that and just look for yourself, I wouldn't tell anyone to believe what I'm saying. Just look for yourself. Do you feel like you're creating every thought you think? Are you putting your feelings there? If you are, like, are they all good? Because why would you be putting stuff there that you don't like? When we look for ourselves, I think we just kind of see something about that.
That was a really hard concept for me to embody and entertain, I want to say. And you've seen me go through this, like even in the binge eating series with you and Maria, who is another coach. I was really skeptical and really challenged the idea of I'm not in control of like anything, like none of my thoughts, like, but what about this water that or this like bottle that I'm picking up? Like, didn't I control that? Or like, can't I control putting off the urges? Can't I control fighting the urges? Can't I control what I put in my kitchen? So what would you say to somebody who's having those thoughts right now, just like I did?
Yeah, well, I love that. I love that you're so open. I mean, you are not alone in that. Trust me. I'm sure even right now, a bunch of people listening are like kind of along those lines, right? Because we're so taught from the time we're born that we're the doer of all of this. It's not said this way, but basically our mind takes it as like kind of we're sort of the center of the universe. Like our mind is just projecting all of this to us. It has us at the center. Like life revolves around us, and we're doing all this stuff. We're pulling all the strings. And so from the time we're babies, that is a huge part of our conditioning. And so it can feel a little uncomfortable in the beginning to kind of look at that. So what I would say, and same as we said with you, like, you don't have to believe it. Don't push it. Don't force yourself to like jump on board with that. Just be curious about it. And just, again, look for ourselves. Look for ourselves, because I mean, there's words coming out of my mouth right now, but it doesn't feel like I'm going in here somehow plucking them out and choosing the right ones. I don't know. It's just, so we can kind of look for ourselves. And then also our mind often jumps to like, oh no, there's no control and that's scary or whatever. It jumps to the negative side of that. But to get curious about the positive of that. Like if life is just flowing through us, what does that mean for us? It kind of means there's a lot less to do. It kind of means it doesn't make sense to feel guilty and to feel shame and to put all this on us. If we're not putting our thoughts and feelings here, how does guilt make any sense? It doesn't. So there's a lot that opens up for people as they explore this. So I say, just take it at your own pace. You don't have to force it, and just be curious.
That's something that I definitely found in the Little School of Big Change, which is the course that I feel like has tremendously changed me. Like one of the most unique courses I've ever taken in my whole experience of podcasts, audiobooks, physical books, masterminds that I've taken in self-development, a lot of them being habit related because I'm such a geek. Like, this concept is so simple, and I love that in your course, you never try to convince anyone of anything. And I noticed that when you answer questions from anyone, you never really tell them what to do. You just put into, like, I don't know how you do it, but you almost pull back the curtains and say, this is what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So now you know what's happening in front of the curtains and now behind the curtains, and you see how you feel about that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't know, like we all have our own source. I think that's what's really true, is behind the curtain of all this thinking, we all know for ourselves. We all have our own common sense, our own wisdom, so there's just like, to give someone advice or to like give new thoughts, I don't think that makes much sense, but it's amazing. And it's so empowering when someone can look at you and say, well, and so we're just more like clearing the clutter. We're kind of, it's subtractive, we say, rather than additive. There's not a bunch of stuff to learn. It's more about just letting all this clutter in the way fall away and then see, hey, I kind of do know what to do.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll say, like, during my time as a student, I was seeing things, but then at the same time, I would lose that insight, and then I would get really confused, and then I would get mad at myself and try to think my way through how can I do this again. But like, just like how you mentioned having the analogy of a snow globe, when you shake it up, what do you have to do to get the snow to settle? You do nothing. You just set it down and it will do its job. And that is something super new for a lot of us that are doers, and for society that goes A equals B. You do this, you get this product. But how about the work gets itself done? That's not a concept that you ever hear from anybody.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it really is. It's so much about looking at what's already happening, what's already been going on, what's always been happening. Because again, that doer thing is so sticky. It's like our mind is all about me, and I'm doing it. And if I do it, I need to do it this way. And it just gets to be a really big rabbit hole that we fall in when we think we're in charge of everything.
I'm curious who you think your course, which is the Little School of Big Change, which takes you through, if you have like a habit or you have like an intrusive thought that you would like to let go of and go on to the other side, who do you think is ready for the Little School?
I think, the beauty in this way of seeing things is that it's not about our intellect. It's not about, as you know, it's not about studying or working hard or doing homework or anything like that. This common sense that we're pointing to, this wisdom that we're pointing to, is alive and well in every single person on earth. So anyone, when our mind relaxes, we know what we're talking about here on some level. So anyone can benefit enormously. I love where our conversation's going, because I think it's really helping people see if this is interesting to them or not. So it does take, as you know from your experience, like some kind of curiosity, some like being willing. And again, I'm never, like you mentioned, I'm never saying believe this or here's how it goes. I'm not the authority on life by any stretch. But
you're not here to convince anyone of anything.
Exactly, not at all. But let's be curious and look together. So if people are listening and they're intrigued by this and they suspect maybe, wow, I think I'm healthier than my mind tells me I am. Like my mind keeps going to these habits. I keep identifying with my thoughts. But it does feel like when my mind settles down, I'm okay. Like if you suspect that that's true of you, if you're willing to look in a totally different direction, just with curiosity, not needing to buy into anything, then you're going to benefit in huge ways.
My question to you now is that, let's say this paradigm now, you've been teaching it for a really long time. Do you still find yourself getting caught up in thought? And when you do, what is the turnout? Like how do you play it out now when you do catch yourself?
Yeah, so I 100% get caught up in thought. I don't know anyone who doesn't, because thought is like everything, you know? I mean, our thinking is so brought to life in such a huge, emotional, dramatic, full of detail kind of way. So when my mind gets caught up in some story of, I can't believe she said that, and what does it mean, and all, you know, I mean, man, that drama plays out in my mind the way it does, I assume, for everyone, and the way it always has. Now, the difference, if there's a difference, it's like the more caught up I get, like the more I notice my mind churning, and the more emotional and tight I feel and all of that. Or if I notice my mind wanting some way out, like, you know, thinking, hatching some plan to make myself feel better, like, I don't know, there's just a waking up to it much faster than there used to be. So it used to look like I'd get super caught up in this dramatic story, and then the next thing would be like, well, I'm going to call her and we're going to talk about this, and she's going to change what she said or whatever, right? Like, it looked like all this stuff had to happen out in the world for me to feel better. And now what's more likely is I get super caught up and I'm in the details and in the story, but it just occurs to me a little sooner, like, oh, you're really caught up. Like, you're really playing this out. That doesn't mean I don't feel it. That doesn't mean I think they're right and I'm wrong. None of that. It just, you know, like, it's just that the how do you say it? Like, the creative force behind the experience is more obvious. It's in my own head. It's like, it's thought playing out and moving through me. It's not that someone out there did something they shouldn't have done that I need to now go fix.
So after you realize that, what do? Do you call them? Do you take a step back? Do you journal?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really do any, like, maybe any of those and maybe none of them, you know? So it's like the realizing of it, like, oh, my mind's caught up. Usually that means there's nothing out there to fix. So I probably wouldn't call them, but not, maybe I would. I don't know. But it's almost like the realizing the source of our suffering, like realizing what's really going on is a mind just has a bunch of stories, and I'm really identified with those stories. That tends to be the end of the road. And now, I'm not saying instantly it all goes away and I feel like I'm in bliss, but it's like you're on to what's happening. You know, it's like trying to fix something in a movie. What are you going to do? It's a movie. You know that it's a movie, so you're not going to jump in the TV and try to fix it, try to make a different ending happen. So it's kind of like that here. I'm not going to jump in my head or jump out in the world and try to make a different ending happen quite as much. I'm still human and I still might, but it's more like, oh, that's a movie playing out in my head.
I love that analogy. I
Yeah,
love
it's a good
that.
one, isn't it? It's really clear because we all know exactly what that feels like. Where you're like, no, no, don't kiss him,
Don't
kiss
do
that
it.
guy. And you want to change it, but then you're like, oh yeah, it's a movie.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. You have a second book coming out, Just the Thought. What would you say is the difference between your most recent book and this one coming out?
So the little book, A Big Change, was really specific around habits. And it was great for that. All the stories were around habits. It's the same paradigm, the same basic understanding, but it was really about looking at, you know, how it plays out with habits. And Just a Thought, I think, I mean, first 5 years have gone by since I wrote the little book, A Big Change. So I think I see things a little more clearly and simply now. So hopefully it's a little bit of a deeper book already. But it also, a lot of the stories and stuff are around like insecurity, worry, kind of you know, comparing ourselves to other people. So it kind of takes it outside of just around habits. It's all the same thing, but instead of, you know, helping people see it just in the habit realm, it expands it out a little bit. So I hope it kind of appeals to even more people.
Okay, and we all know the basis of habits is a thought behind the habit, which drives the habit.
Yeah, yeah. So it's always thought. It's
It
always
really
us
is.
believing thought. Yeah.
Do you foresee another book coming out after this one?
I do. I'm already sort of working on it unofficially, but
No way.
I think there'll be lots more. I just love this stuff, you know. And then I also have that thing where I write a book, and then like I'm going through this right now with Just a Thought, where I'm like, yeah, I could do better. Not that it's not a good book, but it's like after it's done, You know what I mean? It's like, oh, new ideas come up and like, oh man, I should have put that in there. I should have put that in there. So I'll probably just
The
keep
should have,
writing them
yeah, yeah, the
forever.
should have game, the should have game. But I,
Yeah,
I think to that, I would say, well, the creative force didn't give you that at that moment. So,
exactly. That's
well, what do
great
you do? What
coaching.
do you do?
See? Thank you. That's exactly right.
So I want to thank you again for having me in your course, The Little School of Big Change, as well as the subsequence, um, Freedom from Binge Eating series, which is like four or five videos of myself and three other wonderful ladies, you and Coach Maria. Maria? Yes, Coach Maria, where we specifically dived into binge eating disorder and food addiction and having thoughts around dieting and things like that. But what also really came out at the end was that we talked about food maybe like 20% of the time. Most of it was just life and how we saw things
Yeah.
and really how
Yeah.
we saw things. And that was really a lightning moment.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't talk about food that much, but it's because, food is the end result. It's like when we're caught up in our thoughts and we feel horrible and we think we should be doing better in life, or we think we shouldn't eat so much or whatever, when all that weighs on us, then, we look for something to feel better. And for some people that's food, but the food piece is like kind of not really the point. It's really not even all that relevant. So yeah, we looked at kind of how what's here by default and how we all get very caught up at times and try to reach for something to help. But it's amazing what happens though when you even without talking about food with a bunch of people who are struggling with that, like what can loosen up and change when we really get to the core of what's going on.
And what I love about that is when you say that, I people can interpret it as, oh, we have to go back through, childhood trauma. What did your mom or dad say to you? And what was the first memory you have of binging? What was the feeling you're trying to avoid? And there's a time and there's a place for that. But I also felt like when I did a lot of that work, it made me more self-aware in general, but it didn't really necessarily stop the ease around and the anxiety and the obsessive thinking around food and time and date and how much and da 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 da.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot of the past. It was a lot of the past. It was beneficial, but it also didn't bring me the peace that I hoped it would. But
Yeah.
with your course, I found it to be a lot more, what do you see now and now? And like in this moment. And like
Yeah.
we don't have to analyze anything, nothing in the past and nothing in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing that just by what we see now, like that's all we really need. And again, that's just so against our conditioning. We've just and it's all innocent, but it's just that's where self-help and psychology is gone. It's like let's look forward and let's look backward, but to be able to just see what we see about things now, that truly takes care of everything. So it does. And to your point, yes, I mean, it really goes deeper into whatever's showing up in this moment. There's a different way to see it without having to go back and try to rewrite history.
Can it really be that simple? Just ending a habit, like we don't have to do none of that academic
I
work, none of
mean,
that searching. Can it really just be that simple, Amy?
it
Because I
is
think
that simple because we're habit free already. The only thing that has us in a habit is a very convoluted story that we're believing. Even think about this, even like the word habit or the idea of a habit, inherent in that is this idea of time. So no one
mm,
has, if you go have a binge right now, well, you don't have a binge eating habit, you just binged. It's when our mind says you've done this too much for too long and you're likely to do it into the future, that now it's a habit. Now it's an ongoing problem you need to do something about. So even in this idea of a habit, it's our mind is in there putting it on a timeline, telling a bunch of story around it. So and it's not to deny, I mean, obviously we can all live in we're human beings and we have a brain that can look into what we call the past and future. So it's not to deny any of that, but it's like when we come into right now and we just see what's arising now and now and now and what's happening right now. There's nothing really going on right now. There's just, we're alive and then our mind's up here talking. there's something
Mm.
about just coming into this moment and getting used to it. And it's not a practice of living here all the time. I do not live in present moment all the time. Like,
We're not
you don't
Eckhart
have to do that.
Tolle.
No way. You don't have to do that. But like, even just visiting and being curious about this, it really starts to make a huge difference. You start to notice when your mind is thinking about past and future and all. You just see the stories in a different way.
It also sounds like when you said your mind is thinking now you have a habit. Well, our mind is placing that judgment, and our mind is
Yes.
putting the label, and our mind is
Yes.
determining, oh, you fit the criteria of a habit, therefore you must have a habit, or you fit the
That's right.
criteria for having a binge eating disorder, therefore you have a binge eating disorder.
Yeah.
Now let's figure out what to do.
Do you know how many people I've talked with? This is interesting, who say, oh my gosh, like they'll come into the little school of big change for whatever, for anxiety or something. And they'll meet some people who are struggling with binge eating, for example, and they'll say, wow, I used to be a binge eater and I never even realized it. I just thought I got stressed out and I like finished the ice cream and then maybe went and got some more. But they never put that label around it, and it honestly was never a big problem in their life. It looked like what they did to
Really?
blow off
Okay,
steam.
okay, okay. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. What if they're
Okay.
being delusional? Right? They have a problem, but they don't even know they have a problem.
Well, how is it a
So
problem? If you
there's one
don't know
person
it's a
that is,
problem, how is it a problem?
well, I guess it's problematic, but they're not aware that it's a problem.
I don't know. See, there's where we start getting into. I can't see how it's a problem if it isn't creating suffering. How is it a
Oh.
problem?
Okay, true. Yes, true. If there's no suffering, I will agree with you. There's no problem. But what if they were suffering, but they just didn't make that connection? And somebody who was maybe doing the self works, doing the self development, reading all the book. Yeah, I know what this is. Like,
Yeah.
I have a binge eating disorder, and oh, you fit the. Yeah, you have a binge eating disorder. Did you know you
Yeah.
have a binge? Oh, I didn't know I have a binge eating disorder. Now that I think about it, I think you're right. I am distressed. So what do you think about that?
So that person is going to suffer in general. That person's going to suffer a lot more than the first person.
Do you
That
think so?
person, 100%. That person is going to feel super stuck. They're going to be hyper vigilant for everything they do. Because I've seen people on that side too, who maybe don't even binge in a way that we would call it a binge. But they're like, no, this is not okay. I cannot be eating this. I went back for a second. You know what I mean? Like people, because again, it's all made up. Our mind defines what is a binge and what isn't and all of that. So that person suffers far more and then they're saying, oh, I have this label. And so now their mind is hypervigilant and finding all the evidence for the fact that they have this label. They're going to have a harder time than a person who blows off some steam with some food and never occurs to them that they're a binge eater.
Well, it sounds like the little school attracts really smart people, too smart for their own good. And
Yeah.
number two, what do you think about knowledge is power? Because I think people come from a really innocent place where they think, oh, well, now that I know this,
Yeah.
now I can find out what I can do about it. Whereas the person who doesn't know they have a problem can never do anything about it because they don't even know.
I don't know. I mean, again, I think it gets into a very like subjective territory where it's like, well, now I know there's a problem. I just think we know if we're suffering, we know it. We don't need to like all of a sudden like, well, now I can do something about it. I don't know. It's probably a bigger conversation, but yeah, I think like let me just say it this way. I think we have so much common sense. We are so lived. We don't have to do it. We are lived by life. Life shows us when there's something to look at, and it shows us through struggle and suffering. So
Mm.
when we're caught up in a habit or anxiety or whatever it is, that's life getting our attention to show us stuff. So I think that the system's working perfectly. 100% of the time, there's never actually a problem. It's just that we misunderstand it. And like I'll use myself as an example. I thought, oh my gosh, why am I having all these intrusive thoughts? And like, why do I want to binge eat all the time? There's something wrong with me. And then it became a real problem. But if I could see, oh
Mhm.
no, this is just life showing me, wow, I'm taking my thinking as if it's mine. I'm taking my thinking really seriously. I'm calling everything a like when we suffer, that's, our suffering is there to show us, oh no, you're identified with thought, but that's just thought. It's not the truth of things.
Yeah, so it sounds like the habit is just an indication. It's not the habit that's the problem. It's not the habit that's the problem. It's the
No.
habit is an indication of, it's a symptom of, oh yeah, you're thinking a lot. And for this person it might look like they start gambling, or this person is, for me it looked like binge eating. For this person it might look, I don't know, workaholism, impulse shopping, something like that. But
Yeah,
it's not the habit that we've been trying so hard to just,
exactly.
that's not it. That's
Right.
not it. And maybe
Yeah.
we wouldn't even have this. We would have nothing to swipe away when we just realize we have a lot of thinking. Oh, we wouldn't even have I guess the habit maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. There would be nothing to hold it together. We might fall into some coping mechanisms to try to help ourselves feel better in a moment. But again, if we're not walking around saying, oh my gosh, now I'm a compulsive shopper and I need to get this under control. Well, like each moment brings fresh new moment. So we're super resilient. We just see what there is to see in that moment rather than being so caught up in there being a problem we need to carry through time and try to fix.
If we are so lived by creative forces, why do you think that the creative force led us to being so smart and then getting caught up in thought again? Like, whereas, person B who never knows that they have a problem, it's just the creative force led them to the habit, but they never knew that it was a problem. Does my question kind of like make sense? Like if creative
Yeah.
source wanted, you know?
I think again, I think everything the creative source did and continues to do everything perfectly. I think what it comes down to is our own innocent misunderstanding. And it's because human beings, and we could talk about why the creative source did this, but because human beings get really identified with their thinking.
Mm.
That's what
And
it
some
all
of
comes
us
down to.
more so
Yeah.
than others.
That, look at a baby. A baby has all kinds of stuff moving through, but they're not grabbing it and telling stories. And our brains have evolved. Our brain has evolved, and there's intelligence behind this too. Our brain has evolved to hang on everything and find certainty, because to our brain it needs certainty so it can keep us physically alive. It needs to know if there's a threat that's going to come kill you, I need to predict that and know it so I can keep you alive. So our brain just works overtime to know and to figure out and to find that certainty, and it sacrifices accuracy to do that. It doesn't really care if it's accurate. It just wants to like tell a story, and like tie a bow on it. So I think that's why we get into this place where we're so identified with what we're thinking. Our thinking is so dramatic. It's full of worry. It's full of what if. And we lose sight of the fact that that's just a creative process that our brain has evolved to do. We take it seriously. We think if we're worrying, we think there's something to worry about. This really could happen. But we lose sight of the fact that it's our imagination. Even if we're saying this really could happen, what you're literally saying in that moment is right now it's not happening. So it's our imagination making this stuff up, So this is just one example, but I think our brain, I think it all works absolutely perfectly. It's evolved the way it's needed to. And the more we can just back up and get a feel for how it's all working and kind of understand it as much as any of us ever can, man, that just frees us from being a victim of it. So nothing needs to change. Everything's fine. We just want to come to a higher level of understanding about how and why things are working the way they are.
I love that. I love that so much. And to hear that you are still loving it, like you've been doing this for years, so I thought you would get bored at some point. But no, like you're
It
just
keeps
doing the
getting
next
better.
level. Like, well, yeah, it gets better and it gets better. But the concept is so simple. It's
Yeah,
so like what else more is there? Well, there's a lot more and there's not too much more, to be
yeah,
honest. And that
yeah.
was the concept of the entire course, the Little School of Big Change. You guys, I want to tell you, if there's one course that you should take for, I would summarize it, the no willpower approach to ending any thought, any habit. Take this one. The investment is what, 447 was it?
Yeah, 447 right now. Yep.
447. And with the promo code at checkout, the Fitty, THEFITTY, I'll put it in the description below, you can get $50 off of the course. Totally worth it. This is my honest opinion. I wouldn't endorse anything that I don't feel really good about. And I'm a graduate now. I can tell you it has changed me, and I'm still seeing so much more. And I still get caught up in thought, and but that's okay, because once you see this, you cannot unsee this. And I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Amy Johnson, for having me in all of your courses, for doing what you do. I'm sure you've changed multiple lives. You certainly have opened my eyes, and I love being like some sort of help to your team by telling people about you, telling people about the work, because it's so life-changing. So I want to thank you for your work, and I'm so excited for your new book to come out. It's coming out in August, you guys. Is it? No, October.
October 1st. Yep.
Coming out October 1st. It's called Just a Thought. And the Little School of Big Change, doors are open now, and they close, I think, what, August?
September 2nd. So it's one more week to enroll.
There's one more week to enroll. The link is in my bio. I've already put it up, okay? The link is in my bio. I put it up yesterday. Remember, to just click enroll, and then upon checkout, type in THEFITTY, the FITTY, for a $50 discount. You're going to love the course. It's only 6 weeks long, and it's self-paced. There's live group coaching in there, and there's also just supplementary material as well. So is there anything else you wanted to say, Amy? We should definitely follow you on Instagram, but is there anything else you want to share with the crowd?
No, I mean, thank you so much. And I just love seeing how things have changed for you. And I love that, you know, it's like you said, like the cracks have been formed, and you keep on seeing, and you're what, 6 months out of the course now, and you keep on seeing new things. And that's how this works for people. So it's awesome. So I love seeing how things have changed for you, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We will stay in touch.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Namaste, everyone.